Hello and welcome to Prepping for Success, Get Motivated and Kick Goals. So the Prepping for Success series is aimed at getting key points of information out to students at key points in the academic calendar. I'd also like to acknowledge the Gadigal and Bedigal people, who are the traditional custodians of the land, and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. So we've got an awesome workshop in store for you today. And without further ado, I will pass over to the wonderful Roisin to get started.
Hi everyone, my name's Roisin. I work in the Health Promotions Unit at UNSW and I mainly focus on all things student mental health and well-being. So while the topic today is getting motivated and kicking goals, we're going to explain today how well-being really ties into our levels of motivation so that you can make the most out of your time at university and be prepared for life's bumps and ups and downs along the way. On the next slide, I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm joining the webinar this afternoon from the lands of the Bidjigal people, so the lands around UNSW. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and I extend that respect to any Aboriginal people who are joining the session this afternoon. So we're going to start by looking a little bit about procrastination. So this is something that lots of people will struggle with in their lives. And full disclosure, this is something that I struggled with as a university student. So it is really normal. However, as we're going to look at, it can cause issues and it is not a good way to start practicing work as you move into future careers, because you might be able to get away with it for some tasks, but in other tasks, not so much. So what is procrastination? It's a bit of a buzzword. I think if you hashtag procrastination on Instagram, you'll see lots of responses of people maybe having face masks or cleaning out cupboards when they should be studying. But there is actually a kind of clinical definition of what procrastination is. And it's making a decision for no valid reason to delay or not complete a task or goal, instead of doing something of lesser importance, despite there being negative consequences. So common things that people might do when they're procrastinating: journal, or like creating a study template which is color coordinated, has stickers, has all these different layers to it. It's very, very complex. We might spend hours creating the perfect study template, but we don't actually get to the studying, which is a really important bit. For me, it was cleaning and tidying. So I would sit down at my desk in the morning and I would see something that wasn't really in order. And I would think, I have to color coordinate my wardrobe because that's really, really important right now, even though I have exams coming up next week. And we try to fool ourselves by thinking that we're too busy and we don't have time to study. But really, which is the most important task? So we have a little video here, and I'll get Paul to play just the start of this TED Talk. And this is about how Tim Urban, who is explaining in this TED Talk how procrastination looked for him when he was a grad student. So Paul will try to play that now. Hopefully it works for us.
So in college, I was a government major, which means I had to write a lot of papers. Now, when a normal student writes a paper, they might spread the work out a little like this. So, you get started maybe a little slowly, but you get enough done in the first week that with some heavier days later on, everything gets done and things stay civil. And I would want to do that like that. That would be the plan. I would have it all ready to go, but then actually the paper would come along, and then I would kind of do this. And that would happen every single paper. But then came my 90-page senior thesis, a paper you're supposed to spend a year on. I knew for a paper like that, my normal workflow was not an option. It was way too big a project. So I planned things out, and I decided I kind of had to go something like this. This is how the year would go. So I'd start off light, and I'd bump it up and in the middle months. And then at the end, I would kick it up into high gear. It's just like a little staircase. How hard can it be to just walk up the stairs? No big deal, right? But then, funniest thing happened. Those first few months, they came and went, and I couldn't quite do stuff. So we had an awesome new revised plan. But then those middle months actually went by, and I didn't really write words. And so we were here. And then 2 months turned into 1 month, which turned into 2 weeks. And one day I woke up with 3 days until the deadline, still not having written a word. And so I did the only thing I could. I wrote 90 pages over 72 hours, pulling not 1, but 2 all-nighters. Humans are not supposed to pull 2 all-nighters. Sprinted across campus, dove in slow motion, and got it in just at the deadline. I thought that was the end of everything. But a week later, I get a call. It's the school. And they say, "Is this Tim Urban?" And I say, "Yeah." And they say, "We need to talk about your thesis." And I say, "Okay." And they say, "It's the best one we've ever seen." That did not happen.
Thanks, Paul.
It was a very...
So that's a nice little example of how time can very quickly run away with us. Whenever we start procrastinating, we don't do the work until we have that real sense of urgency. So that might resonate with a lot of you, that we need that little bit of pressure. So when we have a deadline that's months in advance, it can be very hard to focus, to build that motivation that we need. But once the deadline is fast approaching and we go into that sort of panic mode, we know that there's no time left to procrastinate. And that's whenever we need to do things which are not helpful, like pull 2 all-nighters to get the work done. Now, obviously, Tim was joking when he said that that was the best work that he'd ever done. If you've ever tried to complete an assignment when you're sleep deprived, or even just have a conversation with a friend, you can notice that your concentration can be really, really poor. And also thinking, for me personally, whenever I was a student and I was procrastinating, and I would finally, I'd always just make it by the deadline, but I'd always think, if I just had 1 more day to check my references, to do my spell check, I know that I would have achieved much greater marks. And I'd always say, next time I'm going to set myself a fake deadline and then allow myself a few days. But it can be really hard. So why do we procrastinate? Why do we do it to ourselves? So there is actually some research to show that procrastination is really tightly connected with perfectionism. So if you tend to be quite perfectionistic in the work that you do, you can avoid tasks unless the settings are perfect, until you think that you have all the information you've gathered, you've done all your pre-reading and research. Only then do you feel ready to start putting words down onto paper. But what's a more effective thing is just to get started, get some words down, and you can go back and edit later on. The other challenge for us is that we want to avoid discomfort. Writing 10,000 word essays is just not fun, especially when it's sunny outside and we want to hang out with our friends. We have this kind of constant battle in our brains, where our brain wants that sort of immediate gratification. It wants to do things that it enjoys now. But what we're asking our brain to do when we're studying is to work hard now, so that in months and years in the future, we'll be able to reap the rewards by getting the good jobs and the good grades that we need. So we have this kind of constant battle between instant rewards and long-term rewards. Sometimes it's because we're just not in a great emotional state. maybe we're feeling a little bit anxious and a little bit down or stressed out. And if that's the case, it is really important that you do talk to someone if you need some support with that. And there's lots of services available at UNSW. Sometimes it's a little bit easier. Maybe it's just about distractions. So you maybe have your phone in the room, you have, you know, flatmates, there's just a lot going on and you find it hard to sort of sit down and study. Those things we can remove. So we'll talk about some strategies to actually remove those distractions as well. And other reasons why people procrastinate, they just love a bit of pressure. We need that pressure to get us motivated. And I'm talking about we because I know that's what I relate to myself. So if we move on to the next slide, Paul, we'll talk about some of the impacts, why this is not a good strategy to go with. So the impacts are, it increases our stress. Putting our bodies through that high pressure on a regular occurrence is not helpful. It also lowers our self-esteem and it becomes this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. So you maybe think that I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I don't want to submit this work because it's not good enough. So we put it off and put it off. When we give ourselves a disadvantage in the amount of time that we have to complete the work. And maybe then our grades aren't what we'd like. And then that kind of reaffirms our negative emotions that we have about ourselves. It obviously gives us poor performance. If you have all your friends are given, you know, a full week to do an assignment and you're giving yourself one day, you're at an immediate disadvantage there. It can also cause relationship issues. So for example, with other students, if it's teamwork, you will have lots of experience in doing teamwork once you start university. So while you might work in a certain way, other people that you're completing group projects with might work very differently. It can also cause relationship issues if you have to cancel plans last minute because you now have all this work to do. So, you know, relationships with friends, family, partners. What can happen is if you continually procrastinate is that it can damage your reputation, that maybe other students might want to avoid working in a group with you, and it can have impacts then future in the career. There's even some long-term health impacts, and that's really related to the stress that we put ourselves under when we need to meet that goal in a short time frame. Missed opportunities, you may miss a deadline, you may miss an opportunity to apply for a scholarship or for a really fun project because you put it off and put it off. And then this is the one that I really want to stress, that it's an unhelpful habit formation. Sometimes you can get away with working on that sort of schedule and it might get you through, you know, your first year or so, but then you have that habit of working in that way, and that's really not a healthy way to be working long term. And also when you work in a, you know, a workplace with other team members, there will be certain expectations of you. So Paul, we're gonna just look a little bit about what we can do in the next slide. So what actually motivates us? What can help us manage this procrastination and this lack of motivation that people can experience? So when we look at motivation, there are two main types. So intrinsic motivation, those are the internal things. So for intrinsic motivation, the reward can be actually in the activity itself. So for example, reading a book or studying a talk just because you're really interested and passionate about it. Extrinsic motivation is the external rewards that we can get or the external repercussions if we do not follow through with the thing we need to do. So that's things like grades, awards, feedback from other people, increased job opportunities in the future, and perhaps increased salary as a result of that. So what we often need is a balance of both. Often it's the extrinsic motivation that kind of gets us going, but the intrinsic motivation keeps us going. So if you look at the types of intrinsic motivation, they're really tied to your interests, to your values, and to your sense of morality. So hopefully you have a purpose. Why did you select the career or the course that you're in? What made you select that? There will be a reason, And we don't all have to have a huge sense of purpose. We can't all be working on a cure for cancer. But no matter what you're doing and what you're studying, it is going to have an impact for business, society, science, engineering, whatever that is. What are you bringing to that world by studying what you're studying? So always thinking back to your why can help build motivation, can help us through really tough times, and it also reduces our likelihood of experiencing burnout. So if you are finding that you're struggling with motivation, always come back to, why do I want to do this as a career? Why have I chosen this course to study? So next slide, we'll look at self-determination theory. So this is a really well-known and well-respected model, which shows that there are 3 psychological needs which drives our motivation. So this model has been around for a long time, and it's used a lot in psychology, and there's things that you can take from this in order to build your own motivation. So the first need is autonomy. So that's having a sense that you are the master of your own destiny. You have selected this course, you've decided to come to UNSW. Why did you do that? You're in control now. This can be a big change from coming from high school into the university setting. So at high school, usually we're dictated by bells and timetables and a lot more hands-on with our teachers. At university, there is a lot more sense of control. You control your day a lot more. You can decide what you're studying. You have more flexibility on your course structure. And this is a time of great independence. Some people can find this challenging, but for others, they can really thrive in this environment. It boosts creativity and it boosts passion. Competence is also known as mastery. So this is where we feel like we are building our knowledge and getting better at what we are doing. So when you start at university, you will be learning lots of new content. Some of it, might be challenging. Some of it might be stuff you've looked at before. But what's really important is to start measuring your progression on your course. And this is why it's good to have goals and to check those off. So recognizing that, okay, when I started this course, I had no idea how to do this or what this was. Now I am progressing. Sometimes it's hard for us to reflect on how far we have come, but it's important that we do in order to build our motivation. And the last one is relatedness. And this really comes down into having that sense of connection to your broader community. So getting involved with student groups, student societies, particularly of people that are studying the same subject as you. This is a little trickier when we are online. Once you're on campus and in class with other people, you will have a lot more of that sense of connection. So when we're online, we need to put a little bit more effort into feeling connected to those around us. So those 3 things build our motivation. So our autonomy, our competence, and relatedness or connections. So Paul, we'll move on now to look at goal setting. So you might have seen this the SMART tool used to set goals in the past. It's used quite commonly, but for good reason, because sometimes when we just set ourselves a goal, like I want to pass this module, that's not specific enough. It tells us what we want to do. We all want to pass, but what we need to know is how we're going to get there. What are the tools that I'm going to use in order to ensure that I do achieve this goal? So for example, if your goal was that you wanted to do really well in a subject, what you need to do is to become quite specific about that. So when are you going to study? Blocking out that time in your calendar. So it's just saying every morning between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. I'm going to spend 1 hour revising on that topic from week 4. So not just leaving it to the end. When we are quite specific, it's harder to kind of just think, oh, I'll get to that eventually. Making sure that it's realistic, that it's something that you can stick to and you're likely to achieve. and that's actually relevant. It's going to get you where you need to be. But making sure it's timely means that you you have a deadline, you have something where you have to kind of check in quite regularly to make sure you're on track with your goal. So what we do know is that with university work, less is more. So rather than setting yourself loads of unrealistic goals and tasks to do, pick the key things you need to work on and don't overwhelm yourself with a huge to-do list. So multitasking on the next slide. Some of us like to try to multitask as much as possible. So we might think that we'll study while we are working and maybe hanging out with a friend at the same time. So Paul would just bring up the next slide there. But what we do know is that multitasking is not a good, effective way to try to manage your studies. We can multitask for really low level concentration activities, but once we require concentration, we cannot multitask. So what I mean by this is try not to study and have all this other noise around you. So for example, have your phone in the room with notifications happening all the time. Maybe in order to concentrate, you need to turn your emails off for the day. Maybe ban yourself from all the other browsers and web pages that you have, because each time you go to another page or you pick up your phone, what you're doing is you're switching between tasks, and task switching is a real drain of time. So every time you switch between tasks, it takes you about 1 minute to regain concentration again. And if you think about how many times do you pick up your phone in a day, and that you can look at that and measure that on your phone, and think that every time you've done that, you've lost a minute. And that doesn't include the amount of time you actually spend scrolling on the site. So my last slide there, building motivation. So some tips before I hand you over to Nyonika is reward bundling is important. So we talked about the intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. So hopefully you're all doing a course that you're really happy with and you're enjoying. And that can be your why, that you really keep coming back to it. So there will be obviously extrinsic rewards, which are important as well, but always thinking about how does this align with my values, my passions and my interests. Now, there will always be foundational courses in first year that you have to do, which don't align so closely with your interest. But remember, by doing those, you can get to second year where you maybe can pick modules that are a little bit more specific to you. Thinking about short-term versus long-term rewards. So also thinking about what can I do to reward myself while I'm studying. So that might be that you light your favorite candle, or you listen to your favorite soundtrack, your favorite music, as long as it's not distracting for you. Maybe it's that you take your laptop and you go to the park and work. Whatever it is that kind of gives you a little bit of a treat while you are doing that. Setting priority. So what do I need to achieve today? Do not overwhelm yourself with a huge to-do list. And then finding someone that can hold you accountable to that. Nyonika will speak a little bit more about that, but connecting with other people who are going to make sure that you do what you say you're going to do. And then thinking about rituals and habits. So morning routine is really important, especially when you're working from home. It can be really easy to just go from bed to your desk, or maybe just pull the laptop into your bed without actually getting up and getting changed. But those rituals of actually getting up, maybe go for a walk, come home, get showered, get ready for your day, those things help your brain switch into that work mode. And likewise, in the evening, switching off is really important too. And then, of course, self-care and building resilience. People who are resilient are the people that will continue on and not let a setback mean the end of their journey. You might get a grade that you're not happy with, but that happens to everybody at their university experience. The resilient people will take lessons from that and apply that so that they can do better in the future. So I'm now going to hand you over to Nyonika, who is from Student Lines, and she's going to talk you through some student-created tips from the Student Mind community.
Hey everyone, my name's Nayanika. I am a fifth-year law and art student at UNSW. I'm the Student Minds coordinator. I'll tell you a bit about Student Minds. We are an entire student-led organization within UNSW, and we focus on supporting our peers for mental health support, and we want to encourage you to ask for help. So at Student Minds, we basically acknowledge that university is very exciting, but it can also be very scary, and that there's always support there. So we want to encourage you to go and get support from people who specialize in different services. So if you're struggling with either academics or anything co-curricular wise, you can go and get support from them. Thank you. We'll go to the next slide, please. Perfect. So how do you succeed at university? It seems like a big question. Everyone wonders about how you do it well. You have different people telling you different formulas. One simple way that I like to look at it as it's like making a nice sandwich for yourself. So to make a good sandwich, you have to get all of the ingredients. Rushin has told you what to do with the ingredients, how the ingredients help you so far, but we're going to tell you how to layer the ingredients properly. So when you actually take a nice bite of your sandwich, you're going to enjoy every part of it. So think of university as a really nice meal that you can enjoy. So when you're studying, what do you need to do? You need to prepare. You can't stop studying without knowing exactly what you need and everything being set out for you. Find a clear space to study. This will really allow your brain to focus on exactly just studying. Our brains like a lot of clarity, and it's important that when you have a clear space, it gives you a clear mind as well. As a university student in my fifth year, I still struggle with this, and it's very common. You want to achieve everything. You keep reading about all of these inspiring stories about Bill Gates having achieved things, Jeff Bezos doing things, even Naomi Osaka doing great things at such a young age. So we all want to get there. You can't get there if you don't know what you need to do to achieve that successful position. You have to work hard in small bits to get there. So take breaks when you're working, and also make sure that you make a list of exactly what you need to do. You can't achieve and you can't master your subjects in one night, but you can master small content within your subject. So make sure you make a list of exactly what you need to do, and that could be reading 2 pages, it could be writing 5 paragraphs, it could be editing 7 pages. Whatever you need to do, make a very clear list and take breaks. Another suggestion that is very important is it's still week 3. Go through all your assessment outlines, go through the learning outcomes, look at the expectations the course has for you, and make sure that you work towards achieving that. We all are studying digitally as well, and it's quite easy to get distracted. So when you are doing that, as Roshan has suggested, your phone can be quite distracting, emails can be distracting, but we can also be browsing online and looking at online shopping and food to buy and things to buy. Use apps like Focus or use telephone apps like Forest to make sure that you don't go through different apps. You don't get distracted by social media. And it's important to remember that what you see on social media might not be exactly how it is. So make sure that you do block these different distractions out of your way and you focus on your studying. And that means that even if you study just for 1 hour a day, you have had a very focused session, and that will allow you to learn a lot more than having a 4-hour long session where you've looked at multiple things, but nothing really sticks in your brain. So this is sort of like preparing the sandwich. You get rid of all of the things that you don't need. And then lastly, it's really amazing when you share your sandwich with someone, and that is like getting an accountability partner. An accountability partner can be a friend, can be a family member, can be someone you look up to, can be someone you do classes with, or can be someone who does an entirely different degree, but you like studying together. The way it works is you tell them exactly what you want to achieve, which is whether you want to write 2 pages, whether you want to edit 5 paragraphs, whether you want to, make a presentation, and then you tell them at the end of the time that you have set for both of yourselves to check whether that work has been done. And then you can ask each other, how are you feeling? What are you going to do after this? And how are you going to take a break? An accountability partner allows you to study through the difficult confusion as well. So that is how you prepare for your sandwich. Let's go towards enjoying the rest of the sandwich. Perfect. So now this is the actual fun part. You get to pick exactly what you want to put in your sandwich. So you're studying now. All your commitment goes directly towards giving you results. Studying is a very important part. A lot of us go through this experience a lot. In high school and middle school, we study a lot and we get good grades. Sometimes we find that we study a lot, but the grades never come through, and you're wondering, why did that happen? What happened? What went wrong? It's because you don't want to just study hard. You also want to study smart. So how can you study smart? Put your phone on do not disturb mode. Get those distractions out of the way. Make sure that you join your classes live. Your professors are sharing so much information with you. They're sharing life experience. They're sharing insights about things. Make sure that you watch it live, and that way you can listen to them speak about things. You can ask them questions if you have any, and you can also share content that you have learned while you've been studying, and that way you get some feedback on what you've learned as well. The next one is a tricky one. I am quite scared of doing this myself, but I've been pushing myself to do it. Turn your webcam on. I know we all worry about how we look and what's going on behind us. It's absolutely normal. But when you do turn your webcam on, it pushes some accountability on you. It makes you listen to what they're sharing and actually listen to the content being shared in class. This way, when you focus on what you have in class, you don't have to go back and look at the content again, watch the video again, and revise everything again. You've already done that in real time. It saves you a lot of time. It helps you remember things easily, and you can discuss it with people who are studying the same courses as you are. The next one is the fun part. Make online study groups with your friends. There's going to be a lot of people with different life and different knowledge experiences as well. If you share it with them, if you have group study sessions, it will make learning a lot more fun and easy as well. And it's a great way to meet people if you're studying virtually. Having said that, while you're making a sandwich, make sure you take a few breaks. Have a sip of water, take a bit of a walk, stretch, go have a new sight as well. Get some fresh air in nature. Make sure that when you are studying, there are not very long sessions. Make sure they're between 1 to 2 hours or maybe 3 hours. But if they're very long sessions, it will affect how much you study. It will affect how much you learn as well, which is why when you are studying, make sure you get rid of those distractions so you have a very fulfilling session. And having said that, the scariest part about studying is making sure it looks perfect. So it's like trying to become, a master chef on the first go. You have to start from somewhere. You have to start making small mistakes, and then you will perfect it. So your sandwich's first edit might not be perfect. Your sandwich will get better every time once you learn what your tastes are. And that's exactly how approaching study looks like. When you have assignments to complete, whether that's studying for quizzes, or you have to write assignments, or you have to prepare for presentations, you're going to wonder and think, oh, I need to do this perfectly and I need to get it absolutely right. I have struggled with that in the past, and all students across all universities and institutions struggle with this. The secret to getting over this is just start. Your first draft will never look good. Your first output will never be clear. But once you start it, your brain starts flowing and you will get into a flow state. Your thoughts will follow, your ideas will follow, and you can just start putting them down. And once you've put something down, you have something, which is better than nothing, and you can start editing it. You can then start thinking about how you want to logically order your assessments, how you want to approach your quizzes. You will learn about what you don't know. And then you can start focusing on that and doing practice tests for that. And that will make it much easier. Can we go to the next slide, please? Perfect. So you have been studying so far. You've got the formula right so far. Your sandwich is about to be made. You've got friends you're making it with. You've got friends in group study sessions you're sharing this with. And you're also going to make sure that you take breaks. But what do you do once you're done studying? You've prepped for the day. You've made lists of things you need to do. You've achieved things in small incremental doses. You've studied smart. You've taken the distractions out of the way. So how do you relax now? It can feel like, oh, because you had a good day, you want to do more. But that's the trick. When you feel like you've done enough, it's really important that you take a break. Don't push yourself because your brain will get tired. It's like a muscle. You don't want to over-exaggerate how much it is doing. So when it's done, take a break, put your studies away, and reflect on what you've done so far. Go for a walk, stretch a little bit, get a glass of water, drink some tea, go into relaxation mode. But when you relax, make sure that you relax with things that actually relax you and not things that stress you out. So relaxation doesn't mean go pick another hobby or another task that you have assessments or deadlines due on, because you're just going to tire your brain out by doing so much that your brain doesn't have time to sleep. Which make sure that when you're then relaxing, also reward yourself, as the Roshan has suggested. That reward could be, food that you like. It could be some time in nature. It could be reading, a novel that you like. Do things that you enjoy as well. That could be playing music, listening to music, dancing, or doing any art or hobby that you enjoy. and take some time away from screens. You don't have to constantly consume information and knowledge via screens all the time, because that may tire you out as well. So take some time away from screens and reflect on how your day was. And having said that, once you're done studying and before you go to bed, make sure at least 1.5 hours before bed you're not studying or you're not doing anything on screens. Wind down, drink a cup of tea, or drink water, or read a book, or just maybe journal as well. Let your brain relax and switch off, and that's the best way you can move forward. So that's the formula for making your sandwich. Figure out what you need, find people you want to share your sandwich with, put things that you want in the sandwich, wrap it up, and now it's good to enjoy. So you relax, you have your sandwich, and that's a good study session you've had for the day. Thank you. Can we go? Yeah, perfect. So while you're at university, you're also going to realize there's a lot of fantastic events that are always happening. In the month of October, we're going to be celebrating the Mental Health Month. A lot of us have had different experiences throughout the last few years, and this Mental Health Month, we want you to join us and celebrate exactly what is going well in your life and enjoy different things that will bring you joy. We've got a number of events coming up for Mental Health Month. Student Minds will be involved throughout the entire process, and we'll be there to support you as well. Join us with different sessions across different clubs and societies at UNSW, where you learn how music is being played, where you learn how art therapy can help you, where you learn how your games night can help you relax, or where you hear from people who have had different experiences and share how they've navigated their own mental health month. So if you just want to take a picture of the QR code, or if you look us up on the UNSW website, you'll find all of the information and the events in the next coming days. So definitely follow us and keep up with Mental Health Month stuff. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nyonika and Roshan. I've definitely learned loads today. So excellent workshop. I'd just like now to open up the Q&A to the attendees. So if you can have a look up in the right-hand side towards the top, there's a little speech bubble with a question mark in it. And any questions that you may have that you'd like either Nyonika or Roshan to answer, feel free to post them. So one that's just popped up is, in your experience, Nyonika, an example of how you've kind of overcome low motivation. What did you do? What actions did you take to kind of overcome a bit of a low slouch sort of time, which is completely normal because everybody kind of goes through that.
Absolutely. So for context, in my 5th year, I still experience that as well. And it's quite normal. Even if, things are going fine, your assessments are going well, if you're working, everything's going fine, it's very normal to feel dips in your motivation. I feel that as well. I feel that around exam times, or sometimes I feel that when I'm feeling a bit homesick. It's very normal to feel that. One thing that you can do is sort of change your perspective. So acknowledge that you are feeling low in motivation, and then don't have the same expectations. It's important that you revisit how you set expectations for yourself. So normally if I do things like, wake up, maybe go for a walk, study, work, and then maybe do something else, make myself dinner and go to sleep, I'd probably reduce that list. So I'd say do fewer things and just do things that you can do at that moment. So it would just be things like wake up. If I feel that my motivation is low, I'd reach out to my friends and family, have a chat with them, connect with people around me a bit more. Do fewer things, maybe just work on one day or maybe just study on one day, and do other things that I need to. It's perfectly okay to, sort of acknowledge that you need to slow things down, and then go from there. Another thing that I do is I ask myself, not how can I complete this? I ask myself, what can I do that will get me one step closer to the final outcome? So normally if I have regular motivation levels, I'd be like, oh, I can write, say, 500 words for an essay today. If I'm low in motivation, I'd be like, I know I cannot write 500 words, but what can I do today that will help me complete writing 500 words by a specific day? And that would be just things like reading research papers, or that would be like, or just writing 10 lines, and that's fine. So if you change the way you answer that question, it will allow you to do something, which is better than nothing. But it's also okay to take a break. But I'm sure Roshan has more to add to that as well.
Brilliant. Thanks. A quick one that's come through for Roshan is I love the video around procrastination and that kind of pressure cooker situation of leaving everything to the last moment. So I wonder if you've got any tips for the students about how they can kind of overcome procrastination, which again is something that we all suffer from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that video as well because I can relate so much to how, like for me, it's that kind of hard deadline. So I think if you've ever done it and you've left yourself work to the last minute, you know how stressful that is, and you know that the quality of work that you have submitted is not like what you're able to achieve. So I think really reflecting on the experience. Things that I do recommend as well is those things like having the accountability partner, because if I say I'm going to study today because I've got, or I'm going to write 1,000 words today because I've got an assignment due next week that I have to submit. If I don't do that, I can fool myself and say, it's okay, I'll write 2,000 tomorrow instead. And then I can say 3,000 the next day. So I can keep delaying and delaying, and there's no real repercussions because the only person I have to answer to is myself. When it comes into having that accountability partner who's going to look to see those 1,000 words tonight or tomorrow morning, it's like I know that the repercussions are much more immediate because that person is going to ask to see those, and I'm going to have to provide an explanation as to why I didn't do that. So I think that's a really helpful thing because it brings your deadline a lot closer, and you have to kind of, you can brush it off for yourself, but it's much harder with someone else. So I think that's really important. Get one person, one really trusted person who will hold you accountable. So don't invite a friend who'll be like, oh, that's okay, I didn't do it either, because that's not going to work. It has to be someone that's going to be like, you said you were going to have that done. I really, you know, I'm going to ask for that. That has to be done. So I think that's really, really important. I also think just looking at the cause, is it a distraction? Is it maybe how you're feeling in yourself? Is it that perfectionistic trait that people tend to have when they procrastinate? And get some support. There's amazing student advisors at UNSW. There's also academic advisors. And if it's more related to perhaps your mental health and well-being, which can be the cause, then speak to one of the professionals in the Mental Health Connect service, because getting this right now at this level of, you know, this stage of your study is really important, because this doesn't, you know, it shouldn't be something you struggle with throughout your program.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for covering that. In fact, that segues quite nicely into my next question, which was in terms of support services, because we all understand that mental health is super important, and it's something that we'll all have to combat at time to time throughout the university experience, as handing in assessments can be stressful, exams can be a little bit challenging and stressful, and anxiety kind of provoking. So all of those are normalized, I suppose, as part of the university experience, but to help students that are going through a bit of a tough patch in terms of pressure situations, what are some of the services that can help students? And that's either Nyonika or Roshan. I'm happy for either of you to answer that question.
Yeah, I can go. I think Nyonika and I are both experts in this question now. So at UNSW, there is fantastic student support available. The place to start, if there's any sort of well-being concerns, and even if it's just feeling stressed or anxious, would be Mental Health Connect. So Mental Health Connect is the entry point for students accessing mental health support. So you initially will complete an online form answering some questions. And if that form kind of understands that it's actually more of an academic issue than a mental health or well-being issue, they'll be able to refer you immediately out to the appropriate service. But quite often it is because, you know, maybe our coping strategies are not very good, and there is sort of an underlying thing that we need to talk to someone for. So once you complete the form, you get contacted by a mental health clinician. and all this service is free, by the way. They will talk through what's been going on for you, and then together you will decide which service is the best one for you to speak to. So it might be a student advisor. Student advisors can help with things like, timetable planning, managing all the things around us that cause us to feel stressed, like accommodation, relationships, financial concerns. They may decide that you should speak to a psychologist in the psychology and wellness service, and you can access that support for free as well, so they can connect you in. Or it may be that you need to speak to an academic advisor, or other services that are available. So it's really good to go through Mental Health Connect, because they can kind of do a holistic assessment and determine which of the services would benefit you the most, and may refer to a few different ones.
Fantastic answer. A quick question for Neonica. So obviously in your experience as being a student, you would have been successful because you've got to your third year. So evidently you're doing something right. So for our students that maybe at the beginning of their chapter, what are some of the key things in your experience that have made that difference for your for being successful and getting to your third year?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely a very interesting question, because you have to go through your own experiences to sort of find out what works for you. I think the biggest advice would be to listen to what you enjoy the most. So I enjoy studying in the evenings, so that's when I study. I also enjoy doing things by doing it with my friends, so I enjoy group studies, but there are certain subjects I enjoy studying by myself. So listen to what really works for you. That's going to be a really good opportunity. Another thing is, say yes to whatever opportunities come your way, but say no to things if you cannot do them. It's a very interesting piece of advice where you say yes to things that you enjoy, but don't say yes if you don't have the capacity. You want to be doing things that will allow you to also focus on your academics, because I find that if I don't do well in my academics, it adds a lot of pressure on myself. So that's when I start saying no to things, and I look at things that I have capacity for. So I use my calendar a lot. Make sure that you put, when your classes are in, schedule when you want to study, schedule some exercising for you as well, because that way you look after yourself. Because when you do look after yourself, you know exactly when you have the capacity to do it, which is why, I could tell I want to take on the opportunity to be a student minds coordinator. So I said yes to it, because I knew exactly what availability I had. So I said yes. It also affects the way you can then look after yourself. Because if you have a bad day, perhaps, and you want to take time off, but you have so many responsibilities, that guilt builds up. So make sure you only do things that you have availability for. Another thing is set realistic expectations, and make sure that you work on everything a little bit every day. So just having that perspective that, what can I do today that will get me one step closer to performing well in my exams, or that will get me one step closer to having, good grades in my midsems, has helped me sort of navigate both the good and the bad days. So I haven't overcommitted and had to pull an all-nighter or do something the last minute. Another really important advice is your professors and teachers are there to help you. So if you are confused about what you're learning in class, and you don't understand what concepts are being taught to you, generally send them an email. I know it's very scary. In my first year, I was absolutely scared of doing that, but just send them an email that sounds something like, hello, I'm so-and-so in your class. I have questions about this. Can we have a quick chat about this? They're genuinely there to help you. So they'll explain things that you don't understand, and it will make it much easier. And also feel free to reach out to people and connect who've done the same degree as you and might be a few years older, so they can give you some advice on how to do it as well. I know it's scary to reach out to people, but definitely make sure that you try and make those connections, because having those connections and professors tell me what to do and changing the perspective on how I can work every day and looking after myself has really allowed me to do well. That would be it for me.
Brilliant answer. That's actually quite a nice segue into peer support, because I understand that there's lots of opportunities for students to link in with other fellow students. What are some of the advantages of having like a mentor or a support there? And I'll pose that one to Neonica.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to jump on that. So, Roshan is a really good example of someone I look up to and someone I get a lot of advice from. So, one of the biggest advantages is if you have a mentor or someone you look up to, they can tell you whether the opportunities or the things that you participate in generally add to you or whether they're stressing you out. So they can give you some good perspective because they've been in your position a few years before and they know exactly how it pans out. They also give you a new, way of looking at things. Thirdly, they also tell you about the other opportunities that exist. So it's really helpful to know what's going on beyond sometimes your degree or your interest area, and they can give you a lot of that insight as well. Apart from that, they're really good people to sort of bounce what your ideas or your worries are from as well. They might, be able to tell you a lot more about how to work through it, how to sort of get help as well. So doing things like peer support programs and being involved in that is really helpful because you are connecting with someone similar in age who's gone through similar experiences and can tell you how to avoid making mistakes that they might have made, or how you can get help that they got and how it will make things easier so you don't have to worry about small things that can build up later on. So it's really important. It's very helpful in like a number of ways like that.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for your answer. So we've got time for just one more question. So I'll pose this one to Roshan, and it's all about balance. So just wondering if you have any tips on balancing out studies. Potentially some of our students may be working as well. They may be kind of juggling a social life as well. So in terms of that motivation to ensure students aren't maybe overcommitting, can you speak a little bit about how important balance is and maybe some tips?
Yeah, balance is really important, but often hard to achieve. And I think especially in courses where there's a lot of deadlines, the terms are short, so there's not any real time to catch up. So I think, as kind of Neonica had mentioned, really starting early in the term is really important. Don't leave it to the end, whenever then your whole life, the skills tip completely. I think it's really important to fill the stuff in your calendar first, the non-negotiables. So often people will put in work, study, work, study, but they don't put in the things that are equally as important, like self-care, exercise, social connections. Those things are really important for your well-being and also for your academic performance. Students that are healthier and get enough sleep and have good social connections and look after themselves physically will do better academically, and there's studies to show that. So I think keep that in mind when you are putting your sort of calendar together. Lots of us might be tempted just to kind of wake up in the morning and do with what's looking at us first. That might not necessarily be the most important task. So plan out your week. What I like to do is also color coordinate my my calendar, and that's not procrastinating, but what I do is I balance it between, okay, what am I doing at work? What am I doing, if I was studying, I would put that in there as well. What are my self-care times? What are my exercise times, my social connections time, and my time to myself? And then once you have that color coordinated, actually just looking overall at your week, is there anything out of whack? Do you have that sort of balance in there? Obviously, you might have to spend more time working than you would spend hanging out with your friends, but trying to kind of, make sure that it is there, that you do have it put in, and try to stick to that as much as possible, especially when things do get busier at the end of term and you have more assignments due. It's really easy to pull out the things like self-care, sleep, social connections, because you think I'll fit in more time for my studies, and it's okay to do that to a certain extent, but once you then lose them completely and lose that balance, your well-being will be impacted, and that will impact your performance.
Excellent answer again. So Unfortunately, that's all we have time for in terms of today's session. So if you're interested in participating in some other Prepping for Success workshops, you are more than welcome to just hop over to the UNSW webpage and just type in Prepping for Success, and you'll be able to see the full menu of workshops that you can sign up for. But otherwise, all the best with your beginning of semester, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks now. Bye-bye.